Hello, everyone. I'm David Turner, Professor Emeritus of New Testament at Grand Rapids Theological Seminary. I'm talking today with Danny Hayes, Professor at Ouachita Baptist University, about the new project that he edited with Scott Duvall called the Baker Illustrated Bible Backgrounds Commentary. So this huge project, I believe, is coming out November the 17th, so we thought we would get a word out about it. I'm not a passive, disinterested observer in the project. I actually had a small contribution to it on the Johannine letters, and I'm happy to help promote the project a bit here today. So I'll introduce Danny Hayes and let him speak a bit about his ministry there at Ouachita, and then we'll talk about the book a bit.
Thanks, David. Yeah, it's good to be with you. I'm Danny Hayes. I'm here at Ouachita Baptist University in Arkansas, and I'm the Dean of the Pruitt School of Christian Studies, and then I'm also Professor of Biblical Studies. My field is Old Testament, and I work together with Scott Duvall, my co-author, who's also here at Ouachita Baptist University. He's a professor of New Testament. I've been here at Ouachita for nearly 30 years, and prior to that, I was a missionary for a number of years in Ethiopia with SIM.
Oh, that's great that you have that international experience and background. So let's just get into it and talk about the book. It's a huge book, 1,456 pages, and I believe there are 55 contributors. So that must have been like herding cats. So tell us about how you undertook this huge project and what the process was like.
Well, it was interesting and it was a challenge, but we're very pleased with how it's turned out. The way the book came about, it's not something that Scott Duvall and I suggested, but Baker Publishers started into an overall project where they wanted to produce a number of great reference material for lay readers primarily, and they wanted them to be on glossy paper with beautifully laid out pictures. And so they approached us about 13 years ago to do the first volume, which was the Baker Illustrated Bible Handbook. So after Scott and I did that, we learned a lot about how to find pictures and acquire them from all these different museums and from archaeological sites all over the world, and how to manage a project of that size. That one was 1,100 pages. So when this project came along, the background commentary, and having discussions with Baker, we all thought that we need to have a one-volume commentary that would be affordable for lay readers, and that we would contact the top evangelical scholars in the world to be the contributors for this, and then we would add into this all these fantastic pictures. We have over 1,600 pictures included in that. So yes, getting the pictures and getting all the scholars together to agree, and then keeping them on schedule. Of course, most of them are experienced writers. They write a lot of material, and they write on schedule. So, but we had a few we had to prod along, and the project has taken quite a while, but it's beautifully laid out. The pictures are fantastic. It's a huge help for the church, and we're excited to have it coming out.
Tremendous. So you mentioned the pictures. That's always helpful for a book about the backgrounds, because it's about the world. So pictures are great. So tell me more about what one would see if they were just to open up the book at a given spot. What type of content is there? How is it laid out, etc.
Okay, yeah, David, we have two kinds of articles. One we call the general articles, and so, like in the Old Testament, then we have an article, on the Philistines, on the Egyptians, on warfare in the ancient world. We have an interesting article on women's fashion. What did women look like? I did an article on musical instruments in the ancient world. And so we have these general articles. And in the New Testament, then the articles are on, Pharisees and Sadducees, Roman soldiers, crucifixion, travel, shipping. But then the bulk of the book is just a book by book, canonically moving through the Bible. And each author then in their book would work through chapter by chapter. And what they would do is decide as they work through each chapter, what's the information that, in their opinion, historical, cultural, literary background that would most enhance that chapter for the reader, that would allow readers to either make that chapter come alive or explain something that would help them understand the text better. So they're not trying to explain the text. It's not like a commentary. It's a background. They're just sharing background material of things that are going to help us understand it. And then, like you said, we also try to have a picture on every 2-page spread at least to illustrate what we're talking about. Sometimes those pictures, like they say, are worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, so it's not just reinventing the wheel, another shorter commentary, one volume book on the whole Bible. It's focusing specifically on the background information. And so it would be best used as a partnering with a more textually oriented commentary.
Right. It's a supplement. And as you know, as one of the authors in there, you have more material than you can possibly fit in the allocation that you have. And so you're selective to say, we just watch the material that I think's the most helpful. And yes, it would work in conjunction with another good commentary and with just your good Bible study skills that people have. But there's a lot of things we don't know as individual readers, especially as lay readers. There's this whole wealth of background information that's available that the scholars on this project have made accessible to where lay readers can understand it and grasp it. And now they can bring that into their own personal study and Bible teaching as well.
Good, good. So who would be the intended audience of the project? Who would profit from using it?
Well, the target group are just really serious Christian lay leaders. I think those who are teaching Sunday school, leading Bible studies together, or just doing serious personal Bible study. I think that's our primary target, and that's who we wrote it for. I think along the way, pastors are going to find it very helpful as well. And that there's a lot of material in there that I think that pastors would not normally be aware of, that they would benefit from it. But as far as the language that we use, we have targeted the lay audience to try and explain things in terms that they would understand without any technical jargon.
Mm-hmm. I think I saw one of the reviewers on at Baker's site or on Amazon mentioned that although it is a huge book, the articles are short and the writing style is accessible and the information is useful.
Yeah, and we stress that, and as my target audience that I think of as I was writing and editing, I teach an adult Sunday school class here at church, and those are that's my audience. Can they understand it? Could they use this? Is this clear to them? Was kind of what I was using to guide us through as we put this together.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, what would you think of if I were to say, give me an example of a passage, Old Testament or New, or maybe you want to talk about both, where you think it's a good illustration of what this book will help people with?
Yeah, one of my favorite articles is the one on Exodus, written by Dr. Eric Mitchell. He's at Southwestern Seminary. And what Eric does that I like is he gives us all of this background understanding of the Egyptian religion and the pantheon in Egypt in those early chapters of Exodus. So as Moses confronts the Pharaoh and starts to unfold all of these plagues on Egypt, then Eric is explaining to us, how is this being understood against the Egyptian pantheon background? Where they, when darkness comes on the earth, this is an affront and to demonstrate God's power over the Egyptian god Amun-Re. And likewise, the fact that the Pharaoh's job was to maintain order, ma'at, the Egyptian word, to maintain this order throughout all of Egypt. And what those plagues are doing is, if anything, it's just disrupting this order completely with all of these plagues. And so Eric does a great job in that article, I think, bringing all of this Egyptian religious material that's available to explain to us that backdrop of the plagues and the confrontations between Moses and the Pharaoh. And it's just a fascinating read. In the New Testament, one that I think is great to bring up is the article that Randy Richards does on shipping and how the ships sailed and the weather restrictions during the wintertime. And so when we read Paul writing to Timothy and in 2 Timothy and sounding like he doesn't expect perhaps to live a lot longer, and then he slips in this verse, 4:21, where he says, do your best to get here before winter. Then what Richards explains is that the whole shipping, all of sea travel closes down in the winter, and starts getting dangerous in September. But by November, there's no travel whatsoever until March. And so if Timothy doesn't get there pretty soon, then he'll miss, he'll have to wait out the entire winter and won't get to see Paul until March. And Paul kind of suggests that he may not make it that long. So I think just understanding it wasn't like now where you could just hop on a ship any day, and travel whenever you made up your mind, but let them know there was a certain urgency there that if he was going to see Paul again, he needed to come soon, because all sea shipping was going to close down once November gets there.
So if Timothy doesn't get there soon, he may not ever see Paul.
Yeah, and I think and Timothy knew that, and Paul knew that, and the readers would understand that. And so what that article does, it helps us to understand that urgency as well.
Interesting. So you mentioned previously that you had done an article on musical instruments in the Old Testament. That interests me quite a bit. I won't say I play guitar, I'll say I play at the guitar. So tell me just briefly about that article.
Yeah, what got me into this, David, was that, in these ancient tombs in Egypt, they have these incredible paintings on the walls that were just preserved. I mean, these are 3,500, 4,000 years old. And in these scenes, the Egyptians paint, this wonderful time in the afterlife. And one of the things they paint are these big banquets where they're having a big party and everybody's eating, but what they also have are all of these musicians who are playing, and it's very intricately painted, filled with detail. So we have these incredible paintings from the Egyptians showing us that, at least for the Old Testament, we have these Hebrew words. How do they match up? What does a harp look like? What does a lyre look like? What's the difference? What about a lute? What about the double reed? And so suddenly we have these paintings that are really clearly demonstrate to us the differences in them. How many strings do they have? Which ones are played with the pick? Which ones are played with the fingers? And so all of this incredible information. So now when we read through Psalms, and it talks about the harp and the lyre and the cymbals and all of these things, to me, it's fun to see it, to say, here's the instrument that they're talking about. And we have just some wonderful depictions of what those things look like. So I find that fun, whether we're in Psalms, reading along, or whether you're in Daniel and it says they played on all these different instruments, when they made these announcements. So
right.
Yeah, I enjoy doing that one. I don't have a real strong musical background, but I did do a lot of research just from what was available in the ancient world depictions of all of these different kinds of instruments. I think it's a very helpful article. Another fascinating thing, David, is on this, back to this article on Exodus, is that there's also this wonderful Egyptian painting showing these Semitic nomads coming down into Egypt. And so we're able to put that picture into the article, and it shows you on an Egyptian painting what people from the area where the Israelites probably came from, what they look like. What do their clothes look like? This is not our imagination or our dreaming it up or just projecting, but this is a real picture of the clothes they have. We can see the shoes, we can see the clothes have like prints on them. There's it's an incredible picture just to see what people look like. And I think that adds a lot, to our background, and this thing kind of comes alive.
Great. Well, it sure sounds interesting and like a really helpful book. And I'm told I have one coming in the mail soon, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I remember, Danny, when I was a young professor, I pretty much thought that all of biblical study came out of studying the language in the original Greek and Hebrew, etc., and just reading the text carefully. And then a bad thing happened to me. I went on a study trip to Israel, and
Yeah.
I was just totally blown away by the insight I was gaining from the text just by looking at the world in which it occurred. And so that's such a compliment to studying the text itself, seeing the world of the text?
Yeah, we've the same with Dr. Duvall and I, we've led a bunch of trips together. Okay. So we've taken a number of students there, and we've been in, biblical sites in museums all over, Israel, Turkey, and Greece. And the same thing, we just thought, wow, people need to see this, they need to, how this makes that passage, come alive. To see that actual stone that prohibits, the Gentiles crossing over that fence into the interior temple area, and realizing how this validates, when they arrest Paul in Acts for having done that, and to look at those stones, and to actually see the actual sign that was there in the temple. That's just the coolest thing ever. And I think it does really brings it to light, and it gives us more of appreciation, and it makes Bible study fun, and makes teaching it fun. People love this, to hear this and to see this. They want to know the background more. And I think having a good resource for them will really help and encourage them.
Okay, so with that, I think we'll bring this to a close. It's been great talking to you, and good to see this long overdue project finally coming out. Thanks for all of your labor, along with Scott and all the others at Baker, to put this together. It's a lot of work, but in the end, if it opens up the text to the Word of God, which is living and powerful, then it's very much worth it. So thanks.
Well, thank you, David, for inviting me on. I appreciate sharing with you. We're excited about this.
All right. We'll see how it turns out. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.